In this video, we'll be using Python and Pygame to create an object-oriented snake game, all in under 150 lines of code. We will have 4 classes: a point class that represents coordinates, a square class that has a color and a position and knows how to draw itself, a snake class that keeps track of its body position, the direction it's moving, and whether it's alive and can draw itself, and finally, a game class that has a snake and a square that it treats as food and handles the logic of the game. Let's start with the point class. It has 2 properties, x and y. We will also override the add and equal operators. We'll see where they're used in a bit. Next up is the square class. First we set a few size constants. Then, in the constructor, we assign the color and position properties. The position property is an instance of point. We override the equal operator and have it delegate its logic to the point class. Finally, we define a draw method that's simply a wrapper around Pygame's rectangle drawing function. Now the snake class. Let's start with the constants. The color constant is obvious. The directions constant is a bit more tricky. The directions constant simplifies logic in the move method that we'll see in a bit. In the constructor, we initialize the square variable to an array of 1 square, default the snake to move right, and set the snake to be alive. In the move method, we change the direction based on the pressed key if it's not the opposite of the current direction. This is where the opposite property of the directions constant comes in. We instantiate a new square based on the snake's head's position and add the movement property of the directions constant to it. This is why we overrode the add operator in the point class. Adding points like this saves us from lengthy logic. I will leave a link in the description below to the commit where I switched from the multiple ifs to using this technique, so you can see how much cleaner this code is. We now have the snake's new position. We kill the snake if the new position is outside the bounds, we add the new square to the square's array, and return the snake's new position. The string method removes the snake's tail. We will see why that's needed when we look at the game class. Finally, we have a draw method that draws all the squares in the array. At last we have the game class. We start by defining a few constants for the colors and the size of the window. The constructor sets the window's size and title, sets up a font to use in the end screen, and calls the reset method. The run method is the only public method in the game class. It runs in an infinite loop. It sets the speed of the game and the frame rate, and calls 3 different methods: handle events, tick, and draw. We will look at these shortly. The reset method resets the snake's direction and position and calls the generate food method, which sets the value of the food property to a square at a random location. Let's take a look at those 3 methods. We'll start with the handle events method. It runs through all the events that Pygame has detected. If the event is quit, then we end the application. If it's a key press, then we check that it's a valid direction key and we assign it to the direction key variable. Finally, if the snake is dead, which means we're in the end screen, and the user presses the space bar, we call the reset method and start over. The tick method calls the snake's move method and calls generate food if the snake is at the food. If the snake's new location isn't the location of the food, we call shrink. By not calling shrink when the snake consumes the food, we let it grow. Finally, we have the draw method. It resets the window by setting its background color, draws the snake and the food if the snake is alive, and it displays press space to restart if the snake is dead. Don't forget to import random and pygame at the top and instantiate the game class and call its run method at the bottom to start the game. Of course, you'll need to have Pygame installed, so run pip install pygame to install it. You run the game by running python snake.py, or whatever file name you gave it. If you're wondering about the weird spelling of snake, it's because in the next video, I'll be adding an AI to the snake game. Make sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss it. Now, enjoy 20 seconds of snake gameplay.